I'm Tomasz and you're watching Casual DIY channel. And these are the 4 router bits that I think you need in your workshop. Check out the video. There are absolute hundreds of different types of router bits. However, if you're just doing a general DIY or you're doing some basic carpentry, you'll find yourself using these 4 basic router bits. So you don't have to splash out your hard-earned money on large sets of router bits, and actually you can just invest in those few. So what are they? Well, the first router bit I want to show you is a straight cutting bit. Like this one. As you can see, it can cut on either of the sides, so it's got 2 cutting surfaces on the sides, and also it's got a cutting side at the bottom of the router bit. Thanks to that, you can actually plunge with this router bit. Now these come in many sizes where it comes to thickness and length. It all depends what job you need it to do. However, I think these are the most basic bits you can get for your workshop, and they can tackle many tasks. For example, with these you can do dados, you can make some grooves, and actually they're quite good if you want to do a bit of hand routing, a pattern of some sort as well. Okay, so let's do a test cut. I have installed a straight bit into my router. I'm going to be doing a channel in this laminated chipboard, and as you can see, I've set up a fence onto which the base of the router will reference on. Thanks to that, we're going to have a nice and straight groove. Easy to do and simple to set up, and this comes in handy in so many projects. As mentioned before, with this bit you can make a plunge cut. That means you just lower the bit into the material and then you can move it into any direction. If, for example, the bit you currently got is 10 millimeters in diameter, that means you're going to make a channel that's 10 millimeter wide. However, if you need the groove or the dado to be, for example, 15 millimeters, you will simply need to adjust the fence that the base of your router is referencing on. Very simple to do, and now you've got a groove that is 15 millimeters wide. So don't worry if you've got only a 10 millimeter bit or 12 millimeter. You can always make a wider cut. Next, I want to show you the round over bit. Now these bits also come in different sizes. The size with those is referenced by the radius this bit can cut. So for example, the radius of this bit is 10 millimeters. From the bearing itself to the edge of the blade, we've got 10 millimeters. Now I have to say, these type of bits are the most commonly used in my workshop. So what they use to give a round over to an edge of a board, or to actually just break a sharp edge in any of your projects. You can actually achieve different results in using just one bit. Depending on how deep you will set this up, it will give you different results. Let me show you. Now these type of router bits, they do come with bearings, and what that does, it references off the material you are cutting off the edge. So it's very important that the material you're going to be routing does have a nice and straight clean edge. Otherwise, if there are any imperfection in the edge itself, it will translate those imperfections into your cut. Now the first cut I'm going to be doing with my router is probably about 1/3 of the capacity of the router bit itself. That will show you exactly what different results you can achieve with just one router bit. Now hopefully you're going to be able to see there's the difference between this round over and this one. So with one router bit you can achieve totally different results. This one is just a light round over, and this one is a heavy round over, more or less to the full capacity of the router bit itself. And what that means, you don't really need a full spectrum of all the round over bits in your arsenal. You're going to need one or two to make sure you are covered with all the radiuses that you need for your projects. Now, if you are beginning your adventure with woodworking and especially a router, I've got you covered. On my channel, there's a video talking about all the basics you need to know about how to use a router properly, how it's built, and how to use it safely. So I'm going to drop a link to that video down below in the description of this video. The next bit I want to talk to you about is the chamfer bit. Now this bit is actually the second most used bit in my workshop. So what that gives you, in this particular case, this bit is at 45-degree angle. So it gives you a chamfer of 45 degrees. Again, they come in many sizes. However, I also got a much smaller bit where the angle is at 25 degrees. So again, it all depends on what projects you've got. These bits work in a very similar way to the round over bits, i.e. they've got a bearing at the top that is referencing the edge of the board or the edge of the project you want to add the chamfer to. And also, depending on how deep you will set this router bit at, it will give you a different size of chamfer. Let me show you that right now. First of all, we're just going to add a slight chamfer. As you can see, it's only a tiny chamfer on the edge of the board. Now, let's plunge the router a lot deeper. And now you can clearly see what different depth of your router bit can actually achieve. Same bit, totally different results. The last bit I want to share with you today is the trim bit. I think it's again one of the most useful bits you can have in your arsenal. So as you can see, it's got a bearing at the bottom in this case, and it's actually flush with the blades of the cutter. So it's perfect to cut out patterns. In this case, as I said, the bearing is at the bottom. However, you can also get bits where the bearing is at the top before the blades of your cutter. It all depends what is your setup. Which one do you need? Well, it all depends on what type of work you will be doing. They both work in the same way, however, it varies in the setup you've got. So let me show you how they work. Okay, so let's say I want to reference the edge of the plastic template that's on top and the piece of wood that's underneath it. For that, I'm going to be using this straight bit where the bearing is before the cutters, as the bearing will reference off that plastic plate just over there. When you're setting up the depth of your cutter, make sure that the bearing is actually riding on your template and not on the piece of wood or the material you will be cutting. I've got that set up with my stop depth here, and I can make the cut now. And as you can see, we traced the pattern, the plastic on top, into the piece of wood just below. In my workshop, these 4 types of router bits actually are responsible for about 70 to 80% of all the work I use my router for. So as you can see, you don't really need that many different types of router bits. It all depends what you do. Now, you can obviously buy them separately, and the prices really do vary. You can get some cheap ones, or you can go for the ultra high end router bits. It all depends on what tasks you're going to be doing. If, for example, you're a carpenter and you're going to be making the same cuts over and over in hundreds of pieces, then definitely it's worth to invest in a really high-end router bit. However, if you're just a normal DIYer like myself, there's no point of spending that much money, as you know, the amount of times you're going to be using them will be fairly limited. As I said, you may be buying them separately, or you can go for a set of router bits. So I've got two, one a very cheap Chinese version and one from Trent, which is still a budget friendly option here. As you can see, there's a vast variety of different router bits like this one, most of which I will never ever use. However, you've got different sizes of the router bits you will be using mostly, so that's quite handy to have, and on the odd occasion you may actually use the rest of them as well. Now, if you are curious if the Chinese router bits are any good and if the Trend are any better, I will have you covered on this, as this Friday I will be releasing a video with both of these compared. So if you're not a subscriber, please consider subscribing to my channel so you won't miss that video, as I think it will be quite interesting to see. I hope that today's video was informative to you. If it was, drop me that like button down below. But for today, guys, that's it from me. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for watching. Take care.